Captain Grax Voltorium of the Zephyrian research vessel Boundless Inquiry stared at the latest specimen with a mixture of scientific fascination and what his species considered amusement. His four eyes blinked in sequence as his upper appendages tapped commands into the hovering console. Recording log entry 7429.3, he announced to the ship's automated system. We have successfully acquired a human female from the third planet of the Sol system. Specimen appears to be approximately 29 standard Earth rotations in age, designation subject H7. The captain paused the recording to scratch one of his gill plates. He couldn't understand why the High Council was so interested in these bipedal creatures. They looked so unimpressive. Resume recording, he commanded with a throaty click. Initial scans showed typical human physiology. Nothing remarkable except for that ridiculous mop of protein filaments atop the cranium. By the void, I'll never understand mammalian evolutionary paths. And the waste of cellular energy on emotions. Hey! He actually made a barking sound that passed for laughter among his kind. Science officer Zendra Kree slithered into the observation deck, her segmented exoskeleton clicking against the metallic floor. Captain, the containment chamber is prepared according to Protocol 597B. Subject H7 has been placed in the multi-species habitat. Monitoring systems are active. Excellent, Zendra. Any initial reactions from our delightful new test subject? The captain's mandibles clicked with what could only be described as smug satisfaction. That's what I came to report, sir. She's not behaving as expected. Captain Voltorium swiveled his torso toward his officer, membrane eyelids fluttering in confusion. Not following the behavioral patterns from the xenobiology database? Explain. Well, sir, according to our research, humans typically display fear, confusion, or aggressive panic when placed in unfamiliar environments. This specimen is Sir. She's calmly examining the containment walls, mapping the surveillance nodes, and Zendra's voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper. She smiled directly at camera node 7 and waved. Waved? As in a deliberate communication gesture? Fascinating, the captain's exoskeleton quivered with excitement. The High Command specifically ordered comprehensive testing of human adaptability and threat assessment. This specimen may provide more valuable data than anticipated. Zendra's antennae twitched nervously. There's more, Captain. The specimen verbalized something our translation matrix processed as nice setup you've got here. I've seen better. The captain's feeding tentacles coiled tight against his thorax, a sign of surprise among his species. Curious. Activate full spectrum monitoring and prepare the first challenge sequence. Let's see how she responds to the Krevasian swamp predator. The Krevasian. But sir, that creature dissolved 3 of our security drones during its capture. Is that not excessive for initial testing? Captain Voltorium made that barking laugh again. My dear science officer, the High Council wants comprehensive data on human survival capabilities. Besides, we have 6 backup human specimens in stasis if this one proves inadequate. He gestured dismissively with one appendage. What could possibly go wrong? It's just a fragile human female against one of the most efficient predators in the Andromeda sector. Security Chief Mardex Vox, a towering insectoid with scarred battle armor and a cybernetic visual enhancer, grunted from his station. The specimen's designation in our database, sir. Subject H7. Perhaps we should review why the previous 6 specimens are no longer available for study. The captain waved dismissively. Irrelevant. Those were collection errors and laboratory accidents. Completely different circumstances. If you say so, Captain Mardex's compound eyes shifted to the main view screen, showing the human female. For a moment he could have sworn she was looking directly at the hidden camera, with what his xenopsychology training identified as a predatory expression. If you say so. In the containment chamber below, Olivia Blackwood ran her fingers through her short copper hair and continued her methodical inspection of her new surroundings. These aliens thought they were so clever with their invisible observation tech. Amateur hour. After 3 tours with Galactic Reconnaissance and 2 years in the Special Diplomatic Response Unit, this wasn't her first alien abduction rodeo. All right, boys, she muttered to herself, knowing full well they were recording every word. Let's see what game you want to play. Commencing observation Protocol 74B, Science Officer Zendra announced, her voice echoing through the monitoring chamber. Subject H7 has been contained for approximately 3 standard hours. Environmental conditions match Earth parameters with slight modifications to encourage stress responses. The research team gathered around the curved monitoring station, multiple sets of eyes fixed on the panoramic displays showing different angles of the containment habitat. Captain Voltorium hovered near the center console, occasionally emitting small chirps of impatience. "Where is the Krevasian?" he demanded, his feeding tentacles twitching with anticipation. "I expected to see some action by now." Security Chief Mardex consulted his tactical display. "The specimen has concealed itself in the artificial marsh section, sir. Krevasians are ambush predators. It's likely waiting for the human to enter its hunting territory." "Well, that's inconvenient," the captain grumbled. "Can we not encourage the human to move in that direction? Perhaps adjust the atmospheric controls to create discomfort in her current location." Junior researcher Plin, the youngest member of the crew with bright blue carapace plates still showing their juvenile sheen, tapped hesitantly at a control panel. "Actually, sir, we may not need to. The human is she's fashioning something from the vegetation and sediment deposits." "Magnify," ordered Zendra, leaning forward until her eye stalks nearly touched the screen. "Curious. She appears to be creating primitive tools." On screen, Olivia Blackwood knelt beside a small stream running through the habitat. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, stripping flexible branches and weaving them together with vines. Beside her lay a collection of sharpened stone implements and what appeared to be a crude spear. "Hey, how quaint," Captain Voltorium chortled. "The specimen reverts to primitive survival behaviors under stress. Document this for the Xenoanthropology Division." Mardex's compound eyes narrowed. "Sir, with respect, I don't believe she's acting under stress. Her vital signs are remarkably stable. Heart rate, respiration, hormone levels all indicate a state of focused calm." "And look at this," Plin added, excitement causing his voice to rise an octave. "She's creating a map of the habitat in the soil. Those markings correspond perfectly with the actual layout, including sections she hasn't physically explored yet." A momentary silence fell over the observation deck. "That's impossible," Zendra finally said. "How could she know the full layout without seeing it?" Captain Voltorium cleared his throat with a gurgling sound. "Perhaps the specimen possesses some rudimentary spatial awareness abilities. Nothing to be concerned about." On screen, Olivia finished binding a sharp stone to the end of a long, straight branch. She tested its balance, then picked up a handful of small pebbles and began placing them in a precise pattern around her small camp. "Trap sensors," Mardex said quietly. "Basic perimeter defense. For a primitive species, they show remarkable adaptability," Zendra noted, recording observations on her data pad. Subject appears to be preparing for confrontation rather than seeking shelter or escape. Plin suddenly straightened, his antennae quivering. "Movement detected in Sector 7. The Krevasian is on the move." All eyes turned to the secondary display where a massive shadow slithered through the murky water. The creature resembled an unholy fusion of crocodile and centipede, with rows of bioluminescent sensors running down its armored back. Nearly 4 meters long, its primary hunting tentacles extended forward, tasting the water for prey. "Now we'll see some action," Captain Voltorium rubbed his appendages together gleefully. "Prediction models give the human less than 30-second survival probability once contact is made." Security Chief Mardex wasn't so sure. Something about the human's methodical preparation made his battle instincts tingle with warning. "Sir, perhaps we should." His words died as they watched Olivia suddenly freeze, then slowly turn toward the approaching predator. Despite the creature being perfectly camouflaged and still partially submerged, she seemed to know exactly where it was. "Sensory capabilities exceeding our database parameters," Zendra muttered, frantically updating her notes. Even more surprising, the human's lips curved upward in what their xenopsychology training identified as a smile. Not an expression of fear, but something far more disconcerting. It was a hunter's smile. "Well now," Olivia whispered, loud enough for the habitat microphones to pick up. "Let's see what they sent to play with me first." The Krevasian predator slithered through the murky water with practiced stealth, its segmented body barely causing ripples on the surface. Evolutionary perfection honed across millennia of being the apex predator on its home world. The creature's chemoreceptors detected the unfamiliar scent of human, triggering its hunting instincts. Observation time mark 3.7 standard hours since introduction, Zendra noted clinically. Krevasian specimen has locked onto the human scent trail. Attack sequence imminent. Captain Voltorium leaned forward eagerly, his 4 eyes widening with anticipation. Excellent. Begin recording vital signs fluctuations. The fear response data alone will satisfy the xenobiology department for months. But on the monitors, Olivia Blackwood showed no signs of fear. She continued arranging small pebbles around her position, occasionally glancing toward the marsh where the Krevasian lurked. Sir Junior Researcher Plynn said hesitantly, the human's adrenal gland is producing stress hormones, but not consistent with fear patterns. This biochemical signature more closely matches hunting excitement. Nonsense, the captain barked. She's prey, not predator in this scenario. Your readings must be flawed. Security Chief Mardex grunted, his battle-scarred mandibles clicking softly. Never underestimate an opponent, sir. That's basic tactical doctrine. On screen, the Krevasian lunged forward with explosive speed, 10 meters of armored horror erupting from the water in a spray of mud and vegetation. Its primary hunting tentacles whipped forward with enough force to shatter bones, aimed directly at the seemingly oblivious human. Contact in 3, 2, 1. Plynn counted down. What happened next caused all 4 of Zendra's manipulating appendages to freeze mid-note. Olivia didn't flinch or panic. Instead, she dropped flat to the ground precisely as the tentacles whipped through the space where her torso had been. In the same fluid motion, she rolled sideways, grabbing her makeshift spear and throwing something toward the creature. What was that? Magnify Sector 3, Captain Voltorium demanded. The image zoomed in to show several of the small pebbles Olivia had arranged earlier, except they weren't simply pebbles. She'd coated them with a sticky substance from one of the habitat's flowering plants, a substance the research team knew contained a powerful neurotoxin. The Krevasian screamed as the pebbles adhered to its sensitive sensory nodes, the toxin burning into its neural pathways. Its massive body thrashed in confusion, slamming into the habitat walls with enough force to make the observation deck tremble. How did she know? Zendra whispered in disbelief. Those plants aren't native to Earth. She couldn't possibly know their chemical properties. Olivia was already moving, darting between the creature's flailing limbs with a grace that seemed impossible for her species. Her makeshift spear flashed in a precise arc, driving deep into one of the Krevasian's primary optical clusters. By the void, Mardex exclaimed, genuine respect in his gravelly voice. Look at that strike placement. Perfect targeting of a vulnerable anatomical point. The creature's agonized shriek reverberated through the habitat. It tried to retreat back to the water, but Olivia pursued relentlessly. She retrieved more of her toxin-coated stones, hurling them with uncanny accuracy at the predator's sensory nodes and joint articulations. She's not trying to escape it, Plynn observed with growing awe. She's systematically disabling it. Captain Voltorium's feeding tentacles coiled tightly against his thorax, a sign of extreme agitation. This is unprecedented. The Krevasian should have torn her apart in seconds. On screen, Olivia had driven the wounded creature back to the water's edge. The once fearsome predator now seemed desperate to escape, its hunting tentacles pulled defensively close to its body. With surgical precision, she drove her spear into the narrow gap between armored plates at the base of the creature's neural stem. The Krevasian convulsed once, then went still. Silence fell over the observation deck. Time to neutralization 47 seconds, Zendra finally said, her voice barely audible. The human eliminated a Class 3 predator species in less than 1 standard minute. Olivia calmly retrieved her spear, wiping its stone tip clean on the vegetation. She looked directly at the hidden camera embedded in the habitat wall and performed a mocking bow. Thanks for the warm-up, she called out. Got anything else you'd like me to play with? I'm just getting started. Did she just? Plynn couldn't finish the sentence. Captain Voltorium's exoskeleton paled to a sickly yellow. She's taunting us. The specimen is actually taunting us. Mardex rumbled low in his thoracic cavity, a sound his species made when deeply impressed. Sir, I strongly suggest we review the security protocols for Subject H7. I don't think our current containment parameters are adequate. Noted, Security Chief, the captain replied stiffly. Science officer, prepare the next test sequence. Let's see how she handles multiple adversaries simultaneously. As the crew scrambled to adjust their research protocols, None of them noticed that Olivia had pocketed several sharp fragments from the Krevasian's broken armor plates, or that her eyes tracked the movement of the habitat's automated cleaning drones with particular interest. She smiled again, that same unsettling hunter's grin. Round 1 complete, she murmured to herself. Let's see what's behind door number 2. Emergency Research Council now in session, Captain Voltorium announced, his voice lacking its usual pompous confidence. The purpose of this meeting is to assess the unexpected developments regarding Subject H7 and determine appropriate adjustments to our research protocols. The command center had transformed into an impromptu conference room. Holographic displays surrounded the assembled research team, showing multiple angles of Olivia as she methodically butchered the Krevasian carcass, harvesting useful materials with the efficiency of a master surgeon. Science Officer Zendra flicked through her data pad, antennae twitching nervously. Our initial assessment of human capabilities was significantly flawed. Subject H7 demonstrates combat proficiency, xenobiology knowledge, and adaptive intelligence far exceeding our species profile. That's putting it mildly, Mardex growled. She neutralized a Krevasian in under a minute. My elite security units trained for months to handle those creatures, and still require heavy armor and sonic disruptors. Junior researcher Plin raised a hesitant appendage. Could this be an anomaly? Perhaps this particular human has specialized training. Even so, Zendra countered, her ability to identify the toxic properties of non-terrestrial flora and effectively weaponize them suggests more than just combat training. She's demonstrating knowledge she shouldn't possess. Captain Voltorium paced the deck, his exoskeleton clicking with each agitated step. The High Council was specific in their directive: thoroughly assess human adaptability and threat potential. They must have suspected something about this species that our standard databases don't reflect. The displays showed Olivia finishing her harvesting of the Krevasian. She had created an impressive array of tools and weapons from the creature's remains: serrated blades from its armor plates, a flexible cord from its hunting tentacles, and what appeared to be a crude sling from its specialized elastic tissue. By the void, whispered one of the junior researchers. She's turning our test subject into an arsenal. Mardex pointed to another screen showing Olivia's vital signs. Look at her neurochemical patterns. Perfect balance of stress hormones and cognitive enhancers. No fear response, no panic, no wasted energy. She's operating at peak efficiency. Almost like she's been in similar situations before, Zendra added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. An uncomfortable silence fell over the research team. It cannot be coincidence, Captain Voltorium finally said, mandibles clicking in agitation. The High Council orders us to conduct extensive testing on this supposedly primitive species, and the first specimen demonstrates capabilities that border on the impossible. Plin's carapace paled slightly. Sir, are you suggesting this might be deliberate, that she allowed herself to be captured? I'm not suggesting anything, the captain snapped. I'm merely pointing out that we may need to consider all possibilities. Mardex's battle-scarred exoskeleton straightened to full height. Regardless of how or why she's here, my primary concern is security. I recommend immediate implementation of Class 1 containment protocols, energy barriers, gravitational restraints, and neural suppressors. Isn't that excessive? Zendra objected. She's still just a human, confined in a sealed habitat. The security chief pointed to the display, where Olivia was now examining the habitat's water filtration system with suspicious thoroughness. That just a human turned a top-tier predator into lunch and crafting supplies. I'm not taking chances. Captain Voltorium's feeding tentacles writhed in agitation. Approved, security chief. Implement maximum containment protocols. And prepare the Nexus Viper pair for the next test sequence. The Nexus Vipers, Plin's voice rose an octave. But sir, those are synchronized hunters with hive mind capabilities. We've lost 3 containment specialists to those creatures. Precisely, the captain replied grimly. Let's see how our remarkable specimen handles a true challenge. If she's as dangerous as we're beginning to suspect, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with. On the main screen, Olivia looked up suddenly, as though sensing the increased security measures activating around her. A slight smile played across her lips as she ran a finger along the edge of her newly crafted blade. I can feel you watching, she said to the empty air. You're wondering what I am, aren't you? Don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. Security Chief Mardex's compound eyes narrowed. Sir, permission to double the guard rotation on the specimen's habitat. Granted, Captain Voltorium replied immediately. And Mardex? Make sure they're armed with maximum non-lethal ordnance. Something tells me we're going to need IT.Nexus Vipers deployed. Containment field integrity at maximum. Neural suppression field active. Announced the automated system as Captain Voltorium and his increasingly nervous crew watched the main display. Olivia Blackwood sat cross-legged in the center of her makeshift camp, surrounded by her collection of improvised weapons and tools. The enhanced security measures were visible as a slight shimmer in the air around the habitat perimeter. Any normal human would be experiencing mild disorientation from the neural suppression field, a safety measure designed to reduce aggression and cognitive function in test subjects. Vital signs, the captain demanded, his voice tight with tension. Zendra consulted her readings with visible confusion. Stable, completely stable. The neural suppressors appear to be having no effect whatsoever. Impossible, Voltorium snapped. Increase to maximum safe levels. Already there, Sir Plyn replied, his young carapace now a sickly pale shade of anxiety. Any higher would cause permanent neurological damage to most species. On screen, Olivia tilted her head slightly, then stretched her neck as if working out a mild kink. She blinked twice, then resumed her calm observation of the habitat. She felt the adjustment, Mardex noted grimly. She actually perceived a change in the neural field. How is she resisting? Zendra wondered aloud, fascination temporarily overriding her growing apprehension. Weight detecting minute biochemical changes in her bloodstream, some kind of internal countermeasure. Before anyone could respond, the habitat lighting flickered momentarily. Status report, Captain Voltorium barked. A technician frantically worked his console. Minor power fluctuation in habitat section 7, sir. Diagnostic systems report all parameters normal. But what? Technician, the captain demanded. Sir, for 2.7 seconds, we lost visual on the specimen. Every alien in the command center froze. Replay footage, all angles, Mardex ordered immediately. Multiple screens lit up showing various angles of the habitat. In each view, the image flickered briefly, showing Olivia sitting calmly. But when the footage was slowed down, frame by frame, a chilling detail emerged. In one frame, she was sitting with her hands empty. After the flicker, her right hand was resting casually on what appeared to be a small control node she'd extracted from the Krevasian's neural system. By the void, Voltorium whispered. She orchestrated that power fluctuation. She's testing our systems. As if confirming his fears, Olivia looked directly into the primary observation camera and winked. Sir Mardex's gravelly voice cut through the stunned silence. The Nexus Vipers are approaching her position. All eyes returned to the main display. Two sinuous, obsidian black creatures slithered through the underbrush from opposite directions. Each was approximately 3 meters long, resembling serpents but with multiple overlapping armor plates and specialized sensory frills that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, their means of maintaining their hive-mind connection. Now we'll see what she's really capable of, the captain declared, though his confidence sounded forced even to his own hearing organs. The pair of predators synchronized their movements perfectly, one creating a distraction with a rustle in the foliage, while the other circled silently behind Olivia's position. It was the perfect hunting strategy, evolved over millions of years. Except Olivia wasn't watching either of them. Instead, she appeared focused on adjusting one of her makeshift traps, seemingly oblivious to the danger closing in from both sides. Attack pattern initiated, Zendra narrated tensely. Primary hunter establishing distraction while secondary hunter moves into strike position. Mardex leaned forward, his compound eyes narrowing. Something's wrong. She's too calm. She must know they're there. The secondary Nexus Viper lunged forward with lightning speed, fangs extended to deliver its paralyzing neurotoxin. At the exact same moment, Olivia casually rolled sideways, revealing a pit trap covered with vegetation. The creature's momentum carried it directly into the trap, a pit lined with sharpened Krevasian armor fragments. Synchronized counterattack, Plyn gasped as Olivia simultaneously hurled something toward the first Viper. The object, a bundled mass of the toxic flowering plants wrapped around a stone, struck the creature directly in its primary sensory frill. The impact disrupted the bioluminescent patterns, severing the hive-mind connection between the pair. She's disabled their synchronization, Zendra reported, not bothering to hide her astonishment. How could she possibly know about their neural link? That information isn't even in our public xenobiology database. With one predator trapped and the other disoriented, Olivia moved with practiced efficiency. She dispatched the trapped viper with a precise strike to its neural cluster, then approached the disoriented one with something new in her hand, the control node from the Krevasian. "What is she doing?" Voltorium demanded. The remaining Nexus viper thrashed in confusion, its hunting patterns disrupted without its synchronized partner. As it lunged blindly, Olivia dodged and pressed the Krevasian neural node against the creature's primary sensory cluster. "Biosignature anomaly detected," Plin shouted. "The viper's neural patterns are changing." Impossibly, the creature stopped attacking. It coiled into a defensive posture, then slowly, almost cautiously, extended its sensory frills toward Olivia. She repeated the process with the neural node, and the creature visibly relaxed. "She's communicating with it," Zendra whispered in disbelief. "No, more than that. She's reprogramming its neural responses using the Krevasian's control node as an interface." "That's technologically impossible for her species," Voltorium insisted, though the evidence was unfolding before his 4 eyes. Over the next several minutes, the command center watched in stunned silence as Olivia systematically gained control of the surviving Nexus viper. Soon, the deadly predator was following her around the habitat like a trained pet, responding to simple hand signals and protecting her makeshift camp. Sir Mardex said, his normally gruff voice uncharacteristically subdued. "I believe we may have significantly underestimated the threat level of Subject H7. Captain Voltorium could only nod numbly as they watched Olivia stroke the viper's armored head while staring directly into the observation camera. "Thanks for the new friend," she called out cheerfully. "Any other playmates you'd like to introduce me to? I'm collecting quite the menagerie. Maximum security breach. Containment failure in sectors 7 through 12. All personnel, emergency protocols now in effect." The automated alarm blared throughout the research vessel, pulsing red emergency lights casting sinister shadows across the panicked faces of the crew. Captain Voltorium burst into the command center, his exoskeleton still half-sealed into his sleep chamber attachments. "Status report." Now he bellowed, mandibles clicking furiously. Security Chief Mardex was already at the primary console, his scarred appendages flying across the controls. "Multiple simultaneous failures across the containment system, sir. Power fluctuations, security field collapses, automated door malfunctions. It's as if the ship itself is going haywire." "How is this possible?" The captain's feeding tentacles writhed in agitation. "Where is Subject H7? Zendra rushed in, her data pad clutched in trembling limbs. "Sir, we've lost visual on the human. Last confirmed location was in the primary habitat, but all surveillance systems in that sector went offline approximately 7 minutes ago." Captain Voltorium's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in sequence, a sign of extreme stress among his species. "Lock down all sections. Activate the emergency containment protocols." "That's just it," Sir Plin said, his young voice cracking with fear. "The emergency protocols aren't responding. Something has compromised our central control systems." A heavy silence fell over the command center, broken only by the persistent wail of the security alarms. "The probability of multiple critical systems failing simultaneously is astronomically low," Zendra finally said, her scientific training pushing through her fear. "This has to be deliberate." The human Voltorium asked incredulously. "Impossible. She's been in isolated containment. She has no access to our ship systems." Mardex's compound eyes narrowed as understanding dawned. "The neural node, sir. The one she extracted from the Krevasian and used to control the Nexus Viper. Our research data indicates those nodes can interface with certain types of bioelectric systems. And our ship uses bioelectric hybrid technology for its primary functions," Zendra finished, her antennae drooping in horrified realization. "Are you suggesting," the captain said slowly, "that this human used salvaged parts from our test subjects to hack into our ship's systems?" Before anyone could respond, the main view screen activated on its own. Olivia Blackwood's face filled the screen, her expression serene but with a predatory glint in her eyes. "Good morning, Captain," she said pleasantly. "Hope I'm not interrupting your sleep cycle. Though I suppose the alarms already did that, didn't they?" Voltorium's exoskeleton paled to a sickly yellow. "How are you accessing our communication systems?" This is impossible." Olivia laughed, the sound sending chills through the alien crew. "You know, for advanced researchers, you folks throw that word around a lot. Impossible, I'm starting to think it doesn't mean what you think it means." The view screen split to show multiple angles of the ship's interior. In one section, the Nexus Viper slithered through a maintenance corridor, its sensory frills pulsing with unnatural patterns. In another, 3 maintenance drones moved in perfect coordination, bypassing security checkpoints. "Your ship has a fascinating nervous system," Olivia continued conversationally. "Once I understood how the Krevasian neural node interfaced with bioelectric fields, it was just a matter of finding the right access point. Your water filtration system was particularly helpful, all those lovely unshielded neural relays." "What do you want?" the captain demanded, trying to project authority despite his mounting terror. "Originally, to go home. But I've become quite interested in your research." Her smile widened. "Particularly the other specimens you're keeping in stasis. My new friends tell me there are 6 more humans on board. I'd like to meet them." Mardex slammed a battle-scarred appendage on the emergency console. "Security teams to cryogenic storage, full tactical alert." Olivia's laughter echoed through the command center again. "Too late, Chief. Your security teams are currently locked in the mess hall. Don't worry, I've left the ventilation systems on. Wouldn't want them to suffocate." Her expression hardened slightly. "Unlike what you planned for subjects H1 through H6, according to your research logs." Voltorium's mandibles clicked in rapid distress. "This is a diplomatic incident. The Galactic Accord clearly stipulates." "Let me stop you right there," Olivia interrupted, her voice suddenly cold. "The moment you abducted citizens of Earth for your little experiments, you violated 17 separate articles of the Accord. So let's not pretend you're operating under any legal authority here." The ship suddenly lurched, causing the alien crew to stumble against consoles and walls. "What was that?" Plynn squeaked in terror. Zendra checked a secondary console, her appendages trembling. "Navigation systems are being overridden. We're changing course." "Just setting a new heading," Olivia explained cheerfully. "I think it's time we all had a chat with your High Council, don't you? They seem very interested in human capabilities. I'd hate to disappoint them." The door to the command center slid open with a hiss, revealing Olivia standing casually in the corridor, the Nexus Viper coiled protectively at her feet. In one hand she held what appeared to be a makeshift weapon crafted from ship components. In the other, a neural control node pulsing with bioelectric energy. "Now then," she said, stepping into the command center while the alien crew backed away in terror. "Who's going to show me how to properly operate this ship? I'd hate to accidentally vent the atmosphere or something equally unpleasant." Captain Voltorium's exoskeleton seemed to collapse in on itself as the terrible truth became unavoidable. They hadn't captured a test subject. They'd trapped a predator. The High Council chamber of the Zephyrian Confederation fell into stunned silence as Captain Voltorium concluded his report, his once proud posture now hunched in humiliation. Behind him stood Olivia Blackwood, calm and collected, absently stroking the armored head of the Nexus Viper that refused to leave her side. "So let me understand this correctly," said Grand Counselor Vrex, his massive ceremonial headpiece quivering with barely contained rage. "Not only did your research team violate 17 articles of the Galactic Accord by abducting sentient beings for unauthorized experimentation, but you then managed to lose control of your entire vessel to a single human female." "With all due respect," Grand Counselor Mardex interjected, his battle-scarred exoskeleton standing straighter than his captain's. "Subject H7, Lieutenant Commander Blackwood, is not a typical representative of her species." "On the contrary," Olivia said with a pleasant smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm actually quite average by our military standards. Our special diplomatic response unit specifically trains for first contact scenarios that go poorly." The assembled council members exchanged nervous glances, their various appendages clicking and twitching in agitation. "You're suggesting," another counselor wheezed through elaborate breathing apparatus, "that any human with military training could have accomplished what you did?" "Oh no," Olivia laughed, causing several council members to flinch. "I'm suggesting that any human with a basic survival instinct and a bit of creativity could have. The military training just made it more efficient." She stepped forward, prompting the council guards to raise their weapons nervously. The Nexus Viper hissed, its armored plates rising in defensive posture. Easy noodles, Olivia murmured to the creature, which immediately settled. She addressed the council again. Let's talk about what happens next, shall we? Because I think we've established that your current understanding of human capabilities is incomplete. Grand Counselor Vrex leaned forward, his feeding tentacles quivering with interest despite his obvious alarm. What exactly are you proposing, Commander Blackwood? A revised diplomatic arrangement, she replied smoothly. One that recognizes humans as equals in the galactic community, not as research subjects or potential threats to be contained. And if we refuse, the question came from a shadowy figure at the far end of the council table. Olivia's smile didn't waver. Then I release the data packet I've prepared detailing your violations of the Accord to every signatory species. I've already transmitted it to my superiors on Earth with a dead man's switch. She casually examined her fingernails. I imagine several of your rival confederations would be quite interested in the bioweapon research I found in your restricted databases. A ripple of alarm spread through the council chamber. That's blackmail, sputtered a counselor with luminescent skin patterns. That's diplomacy, Olivia corrected cheerfully. As practiced by a species you thought was only worthy of being locked in cages with monsters. Captain Voltorium cleared his throat nervously. If I may, Grand Counselor. Having observed Commander Blackwood's capabilities firsthand, I strongly advise accepting her proposal. The Grand Counselor's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he considered the situation. Finally, he gave the Zephyrian equivalent of a resigned sigh, a whooshing sound from his upper respiratory vents. Very well. The Zephyrian Confederation will enter into formal diplomatic relations with Earth. All research data collected on humans will be transferred to your government as a gesture of goodwill. And the other human captives will be released immediately, Olivia added firmly. Of course, the Grand Counselor agreed hastily. Olivia nodded, satisfied. Excellent. My ship will be arriving shortly to escort us home, she paused, then added with a predatory grin. Oh, and I'll be keeping noodles here as a souvenir. We've grown quite attached. As the council session adjourned and arrangements were made for the humans' departure, Science Officer Zendra approached Olivia tentatively. I must ask, she said, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. How did you know so much about our biology, our technology, our systems? It was as if you'd studied us for years. Olivia's expression softened slightly. We've been watching your confederation for quite some time, Officer Zendra. Your abduction program wasn't nearly as secret as you believed. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Here's a free lesson about humans. We're not naturally aggressive or warlike, but we are incredibly protective and adaptable. She glanced toward Captain Voltorium, who was being severely reprimanded by the Grand Counselor. Just remember, Olivia said, the next time you decide to lock someone in a cage with monsters, make sure they're not the scariest one.